Las Vegas massacre understandably getting a lot of attention now, but there's another massacre happening in slow motion, has been for years, in the city of Chicago, and other cities, by the way. But Chicago recently recorded its 500th gun homicide for the year. By the end of this year, it will have enough fatal shootings to match Stephen Paddock's murder spree at least 10 times over. George Cardenas is a Chicago alderman. He's upset about this, understandably. He says tough gun laws could help the situation. Alderman Cardenas joined us tonight. Mr. Cardenas, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tucker. Thanks for the invite.
So I've done this story. I know you're sincerely concerned about this, and I appreciate that. And I've done this story a million times, and it's always the same answer, which is we need better gun control in the city of Chicago because we have Indiana right next door. And I always think, well, you know, I live in D.C., which has a much lower murder rate than Chicago. I live like 800 yards from Virginia, which has lax gun laws. Why is Chicago different?
Well, I mean, it's different for a lot of different reasons. And, you know, obviously guns are part of the problem, but it isn't the only problem. You have a community and beset by unemployment, by lack of opportunities. And by the way, most of the homicides and violence are affected in African-American communities, some Hispanics, but blacks are really impacted by the gun violence. When you have had this investment and you cut schools, and you cut school funding. And for decades, by the way, the areas of the South Side and the West Sides have been left with neglect. Jobs have left. All the manufacturing jobs that were there decades ago are long gone. Nothing has replaced that. You add that to the mix of everything happening in the city of Chicago, and along with cases, obviously, of police brutality, allegations of.
Wait, but I mean, look, I'm not discounting any of that. You know, most of what you said is real, except the school funding thing, which is silly. But the rest of it is real. There is a job crisis there, but there's a job crisis in a lot of parts of the country, de-industrial parts of the country that don't have the same murder rate. Maine or Appalachia, there are lots of places that have similar problems but don't have the murder rate that you guys have. Why does nobody ever mention? Why does nobody ever mention the fact that the majority of kids in Chicago don't have a father at home? Do you think that's a part of it?
Well, that's part of it. If you have a lack of job opportunities, if you have lack of you know, infrastructure where
the family part of it. I know the job part.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But why does nobody ever mention that? Why are politicians so afraid?
We mention it. We acknowledge it.
No, you don't. No, you never do. That's not true.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs here in place in this city.
I'm not talking about programs. I'm not talking about programs.
Become a father.
Look, you know the truth, and I know you're smart. I'm not patronizing you, but I'm being sincere. If you don't have a dad at home, you can grow up to be a great person, but and most do. But it's a lot harder, and you're much more likely to have violence in your neighborhood if nobody has a dad. Well, why does nobody have
Tucker,
the courage to say that?
Let's talk about the numbers. Let's talk about the numbers.
Yeah.
So, here, let's talk about the numbers. So in Illinois, you have approximately 49,000 prison inmates. 65% of those prison inmates happen to be African American.
Right.
Now, as a percentage of the population in Illinois, they're only 14% of the population. So, you know, what's going on? Why is so many African Americans incarcerated? Not to mention, not just African Americans, Hispanics as well, but those statistics tell you if they're not, if obviously they're in prison, they can be at home providing for their families, right? So you're saying those statistics, yes, of course, you're going to see a big gap in that. It's a social problem that we have. So I need you to understand that, because you're asking why isn't the father home?
Social problems are complex, as you know, and I don't want to reduce it just to one factor, because that's not fair. But that's a huge factor. The family you grow up in shapes a lot of who you are. And it did for you, it did for me. And if you have a community where, like, nobody in the neighborhood is a dad at home, maybe that's a massive part of it. And politicians, particularly on the left, are so afraid to say that out loud because it sounds mean or because they're courting single women as a voting bloc, which you are, I know. Why don't they get over their political fear and tell
Tucker,
the truth
I think you want to solve the problem, don't you? I mean, no, forget about Republican, Democrat. You like to solve the problem, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, this is a big city. It affects the United States.
Yes, I
agree.
Affects America. And I don't think that's the only
There's a lot of Republicans
factor
here in Illinois.
Right?
I'm just saying that if you take the data of African Americans being incarcerated at 10 times the rate of everybody else, if they're in prison, they can't be at home providing for their family, right?
I think that's part of it, but wouldn't it be helpful just to name the problem and stop patronizing us with this nonsense about Indiana being responsible because they have different gun laws? Like, that's just dumb, and everybody knows it, right?
Well, look, I'm not.
You didn't say it, but everybody says that.
What I'm saying here is that guns are also part of the problem because guns are cheaper than buying an iPhone. I mean, that's crazy. $100 to buy a gun, and when you have an area in the city of Chicago, a community beset by violence, beset by unemployment, beset by a lot of also socioeconomic problems, right. that's just fuel to the fire. That's what I'm saying.
But it's not the cause.
Problem, no
Those
doubt
are tools. Yeah, I get it.
Right. We got to come to solutions.
George, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.